Welcome back to Construct Your Life. Man, I tell you what, I'm tired. I'm sweating. The emotional roller coaster. I'm doing this new thing where I'm bringing people on and we're doing a 3-part series. My man, Brian, takes us through the emotions of closing a business. We do a 3-part series. You got to dive in. You got to share the story. So many ups and downs, so much fun. But I am sweating and need to go change my shirt. So y'all dive in, and we'll see you soon, guys.
Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
See, guys, if you listen to part 2, I started getting fiery about attorneys, and I had to break it off there because that could be a whole nother book, soliloquy, Odysseus, necessary evil. We'll just call them in the process so I don't get sued. But we're in part 3 of the emotions of doing a deal. So you're in the second time the deal's back alive. You agree to the new price. Where are we going from here?
So from here, we're trying to get an LOI signed. And in the state of Florida, they have what's called an asset purchase agreement. And most of the brokers in the state of Florida want you to sign an asset purchase agreement and not an LOI, right? And an asset purchase agreement is a legally binding document. It is a contract. An LOI is not that. An LOI just explains your interest, the price you're willing to pay, and gives you exclusivity, right, to where the seller isn't out shopping the deal. That's all the LOI is meant for. Typically, the APA or the contract gets signed later in the process. Well, the state of Florida works a little differently. So the broker wanted to get an APA signed. And again, I switched attorneys. My new representation was like, if we do an APA, that's fine. The templated APA agreement that the state of Florida supplies, we can do that, but I'm going to have to put a bunch of stuff on here to mark it up. So the seller said, sure, that's fine, but then I'm going to need my attorney to look at it. So you can imagine where this is going, is that It took us almost 3 months. No, actually, it was 4 months before we actually had the APA signed. 4 months. So I had to take matters into my own hands after about 3 weeks in, because at this point I'm like, look, we're not under contract. So if we're not under any type of contract or any type of LOI, sure, we agreed verbally to a price, but nothing's signed. Like, I don't have any assurances that A, that you aren't still shopping this deal, and that B, we're actually going to move forward. So I got on the phone with the brokers like, listen, let's just get an LOI put in place, please. I'll write it up real quick. I'll have my attorney review it. I called the seller and said, hey, seller, forget the brokers. We need to put an LOI in place. It's non-binding. All it's saying is that I'm committed to this deal and you aren't going to shop it around. Sound good to you? Yeah, send it right over. Okay, send it right over. Which leads me to the very important point. Once you get under LOI, the faster you can establish a relationship with the seller and get on one-on-one terms with them, the better. Right? Forget the broker. Forget, because
here's the deal. Here's the deal.
Problems.
Here's the deal. My deal took 15 months. I'm paying the broker myself. That's for another podcast, another day. All right. We're okay. But she literally, after doing the email, was not involved in the deal for the 15 months. I was on a 1-1 basis with the seller.
Yeah.
And as uncomfortable as that was, it got stuff done no matter how long it took. No brainer.
Yeah.
No brainer.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And then the broker's still was a challenge all the way through the process for that. You know the old game of telephone when you're in elementary school? It just doesn't work with deals.
You know what my mentor? You know what my mentor told me? He said the greatest thing I could tell you is you got to be smarter than the animals you're hunting.
Yeah. That is so true.
It's the truth. But look, guys, we're talking through a business deal that's very complex. But you have to understand, in the midst of all this, people want to get paid. Their childhood traumas are on, and their egos. You got to understand everybody's position, why they're in the deal, what's the outcome they're seeking in the deal, and then you got to deconstruct it from that point of view.
100%. So the broker's putting pressure on to get the deal closed so they can get paid, right? I mean, that's what they're trying to do, and I get it, and I don't discourage that, but sometimes it could be they can get in their own way, and they can get in the deal's way too. So the sooner you can get established relationship with the seller, the better. So that's what I did. I made a point to make sure that the seller and I were talking as much as possible, and that him and I were sharing information, and then we would communicate it to the broker, right? Instead of the other way around, instead of playing this game of telephone, and that helped. So we got the LOI signed, which was great. And then we did start to focus on the APA, getting that done, getting that squared away with our appropriate attorney. So, that kind of settled things down a little bit, which was great. But it still took a lot longer than I anticipated to even get to that point. And then, all the while too, the weeks are going by, right? The months are going by. The bank's like, when are we getting this deal closed? Like, what's taking so long? So they're putting pressure on it too. And every month that goes by, they need updated financials. It's like, whew, it becomes super frustrating because you're having to almost like restart the cycle every month, right? As well.
It's cliche to say, but it's true. Time kills all deals.
It does.
Right? And I got into it with his lawyer at the end, and he goes, "Why are the people on your side not ready to close this deal?" And I said, "Because we've tried to close it 15 times. And until you're actually fucking serious, I'm not going to bother them again, because they're losing their patience with me, and they want to get paid. And when you're ready to actually go, then they'll get moving." And that was my stance, period, in the story. I'm not going to burn my relationship because you can't get your stuff together.
Yeah. And my seller isn't the typical 65-year-old looking to retire seller either. So he wasn't necessarily in a rush, right? He was still working in the field, could still work in the field. And so he wasn't as, he didn't have the same urgency that I would have liked for him to have, and that caused some delays. And so, and you just have to be mindful of that too. And that's why it's important to understand, the seller's perspective and get on a good, get on good rapport with them. Because then I told him, I got to the point where I was like, look, the longer it takes, the more likely this deal doesn't happen. And here's why, right? Here's all the reasons why. And so if we could, if I can get your undivided attention on this to push this through, we can get it done. You can get paid, and we can all move on from this. So it took me probably 3 or 4 months in, to have that conversation with him. So he was aware, one, that I was really serious, because he had gone through another buyer already that had gone about halfway through the deal, did the due diligence, it came to the same conclusion that I did, that the company wasn't worth as much as he was trying to sell it for. The only problem is that well, not the problem, but that buyer just walked away. They didn't reconvene. So having that conversation with him, I think, really helped get it done. So,
and where did it die the third time?
So the third time, it almost died with the landlord. The landlord of all people, right? Someone that is not in control of the deal, or not in the deal whatsoever, which is why it's so important that you have the landlord somewhat involved in this earlier than 2 weeks before closing, right? Because that's not going to fly. And in this case, I had a landlord that was 85 years old, that he owned the whole block, right? So this area that I'm in, where the building is located at, is just it's industrial park.
So, guys, I know this isn't traditionary, but Brian's audio cut out for some reason, and he had like 3 minutes left in the story. So I was going to tell you because I don't want to leave you cliffhanging. Basically, 2 weeks to closing, the landlord would not sign the thing. So he went to the bank. He already went to the bank 6 months ago and said, my location is not dependent on me making money, right? And so he begged the bank to reconsider that he could run his business from his house, right? Because there was no chance the seller, who already didn't want to sign a 10-year lease, was going to allow the bank to step in and run this business if it defaulted. So that was never going to happen. So he had to go to the other party, the bank, right? So finally, in the last hour, the bank agreed to recognize his business as something that could be run from anywhere. It was unlike a restaurant, so it was not ideal. It didn't need the location to make money. He could run it out of his garage if he wanted to. This is something that a lot of people just assume the landlord's going to be okay with it. Most of these people that have owned these businesses for a really long time or own this real estate for a really long time don't like change. And so the quicker you can get out ahead of this, the better. But man, I tell you what, guys, ups and downs. This was an amazing display of what it takes to get a deal done. And at the last hour, this landlord was going to affect everything, but he got it done. He made it happen no matter what. So I just wanted to give you the last person. I apologize that his audio cut out, and I didn't want him to have to retell the story again. So I just filled in the blanks, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you so much. Part 3 finished, the emotions of closing a deal. Guys, let me take a minute to tell you about my buddies over at Lead Hub, Ben and Aaron, the best humans I know. Not only are they amazing at marketing for trade companies, but Ben started his HVAC company in his garage, sold it for multi-million dollars. So when this guy talks, I listen. When we took over Dietz Mechanical, we had 22 reviews in 22 years. In 7 short months, we went from 22 reviews to 107. We went from a 4.2 to a 4.7. We tripled our Facebook presence and we tripled our calls. If you're an HVAC, plumbing, electric, landscaping company, and you're looking for a no BS approach to marketing, you're looking for people who have done it before, you got to go to leadhub.net